I was putting on my shoes when the phone buzzed with that force that chills your blood. It was Stephen, my accountant. The message said, "Carol, call me now. Do not go to Daniel's house today. Please." My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. I was wearing my pearl earrings, the ones Daniel gave me 10 years ago for Mother's Day. I was wearing the beige dress he liked so much. I had been making my grandkids' favorite dessert since 6 in the morning. And now this. I dialed Stephen's number with trembling fingers. He answered on the first ring. His voice sounded different, tense, as if he was holding back something very heavy. "Carol, I need you to sit down. What I'm about to tell you is going to hurt, but you need to know now, before it's too late." I sat on the edge of my bed. The bed I'd slept in alone since I was widowed 12 years ago. The bed where I'd cried every time Daniel stopped answering my calls. The bed where I asked myself 1,000 times if I had been a good mother. Stephen started talking, and every word was like a nail in my chest. 3 days ago, Daniel came to my office. He didn't know I was your accountant. He asked me to prepare some documents. Documents to transfer your house into his name. Documents to empty your savings account. A power of attorney that he was going to have you sign today, at that lunch. Carol, it's all planned. Your daughter-in-law, Jennifer, even has the exact words they're going to use to convince you. The world stopped. The clock in the living room showed 11:15. In 45 minutes, I would be knocking on my son's door. In an hour, I would be sitting at his table. And according to Stephen, in 2 hours, I would have signed away my own ruin. "They have the papers ready," Stephen continued, his voice cracking. "They're going to tell you it's to protect you, that it's because of your age, that it makes things easier if something happens to you. They're going to use the kids as an excuse. They're going to make you feel like it's the best thing for everyone." I looked around my room. The walls I painted myself after my husband died. The curtains I sewed by hand. The photo of Daniel at his graduation, smiling, with that spark in his eyes I thought was love. How many nights did I skip dinner to pay for his college? How many extra jobs did I take so he could have what he needed? I sold my mother's jewelry. I sold my husband's car. I even sold the living room furniture so my son could get his business degree and have a better future than mine. And now he wanted to take everything. Not ask for it, not discuss it. Take it, as if I were an obstacle, as if my existence were a problem to be solved, as if the 69 years of my life were worth nothing. Stephen was still talking, but I could barely hear him over the sound of my own heart breaking. "Carol, I have copies of the documents. I reviewed them. They are perfectly drafted to look legal. If you sign today, in 48 hours your house will be in Daniel's name. In a week, your savings will be gone. The $42,000 you saved over 30 years of work. $42,000. Every cent earned cleaning other people's houses. Every bill saved instead of buying new clothes for myself. Every sacrifice made to have something secure in my old age. And my son knew it. He knew exactly how much was in that account because last year, when I loaned him $5,000 for his business, I showed him my bank statement so he could see I was able to help him. He never paid that money back. And I never asked for it, because a mother doesn't charge, I thought. A mother gives without expecting anything in return. But this wasn't asking. This was stealing. Stealing with paperwork. Stealing with fake hugs. Stealing with a Sunday lunch. "Stephen," I said, and my voice came out as thin as a thread. "Are you absolutely sure?" There was a silence on the other end. Then his answer, clear and painful. "Carol, I have the documents on my desk right now. They are dated for today. They have a space for your signature. And they have a clause that says you voluntarily agree to transfer all your assets because you can no longer manage them alone. This isn't a mistake. This is a plan." I stood up from the bed and walked to the mirror. The woman looking back at me was 69 years old, but in that moment, she looked 100. Her eyes were red. Her hands were shaking. The beige dress suddenly seemed like a ridiculous costume. Who was I trying to fool? Who was I, believing I still mattered? My only son had been setting a trap for me. Not since yesterday. This had been going on for a time. This required planning. This meant that every time he had called me in recent months, every time he asked about my health, every time Jennifer was nice to me, it was all a lie. It was all preparation for this moment, for this lunch, for these papers, to erase me. I looked at the photo of Daniel on the wall. He was 5 years old in that picture, smiling with his front teeth missing. He was wearing the red t-shirt I bought him at the department store. I was hugging him, and his little hands were wrapped around my neck. In that photo, he loved me. In that photo, I was his world. When did I stop being that? When did I become a problem? When did my love stop mattering, and only my money mattered? Stephen was still on the phone, waiting. "What do I do?" I asked, though a part of me already knew the answer. "Don't go, Carol. Don't go today. And tomorrow, you come to my office. We need to legally protect your assets before they try something else." Something else. As if this were just the beginning. As if my son was already thinking about the next step, the next lie, the next way to get me out of the way. I hung up the phone and stood in the middle of my room. The dessert was ready in the kitchen. My shoes were on. My earrings were shining. But I wasn't going anywhere. I called Daniel. He answered on the third ring with that cheerful, fake voice I now recognized for what it was. An act. "Mom, are you on your way? The kids are asking for you." The kids. Always the kids as a shield, as an excuse, as a tool for manipulation. "Daniel," I said, and my voice sounded firmer than I expected. "I'm not going to be able to make it today. I'm not feeling well." There was a silence that was too long, a silence that confirmed everything Stephen had told me. "Not well? What's wrong?" His voice had changed. It wasn't cheerful anymore, it was tense. Worried, but not for my health. Worried because his plan had just fallen apart. "I just need to rest. We'll do it another day." Another silence. "But Mom, we have everything ready. The kids want to see you. Jennifer made your favorite meal." Lies. All lies. "I'm sorry, honey. We'll talk later." I hung up before he could insist, before he could convince me, before he could use that voice that always worked, that voice that made me feel guilty for existing, for needing, for being alive. I took off my shoes. I took off my earrings. I took off the beige dress. And I put on my old pajamas, the ones with a hole in the shoulder, but that are the most comfortable in the world. I sat in the living room with a cup of tea I had no desire to drink. The phone started ringing. It was Daniel. I didn't answer. It rang again. I didn't answer. Then a text message came through. "Mom, are you okay? We're worried. Worried about me, or worried because their plan had just failed." I stared at that message for 5 full minutes, and in those 5 minutes, I understood something I should have understood years ago. My son didn't love me. My son loved what I could give him. I sat in that living room until the light changed color and the afternoon turned orange. The tea grew cold in my hands. The phone kept ringing, but I wasn't looking at it anymore. Because in my head, images started to appear. Memories. Moments that seemed normal at the time, but now, with this new truth laid on top, took on a completely different meaning. Like when you watch a movie for the second time, and you understand all the clues you missed the first time. I remembered Daniel's birthday 6 months ago. I arrived with a cake I had baked myself. I knocked, and Jennifer opened the door with that smile that never reached her eyes. "Carol, what a surprise," she said, even though I had confirmed my visit 3 times that week. "We didn't know you were coming today." But they did know. I had called the day before. Daniel had told me, "Yeah, Mom. Come over at 4. And when I arrived at 4 o'clock sharp, the house was full of people I didn't know. Their friends, colleagues from work, neighbors. But there was no place for me. I stood in the corner of the living room holding my homemade cake while everyone ate the expensive bakery cake they had bought. No one tried mine. At 5:30, Jennifer told me in that soft, venomous voice, "Carol, I think Daniel is tired. Maybe it's best if you go so he can rest." I left, with my entire cake. And I cried the whole way home on the bus because I thought the problem was me, that I had come at a bad time, that I was too sensitive. But it wasn't that. It was that I was already a bother. I was already an extra. I was the old mother who didn't fit into their new life. I remembered last Christmas. Daniel called me on December 23rd. "Mom, we're just doing something small this year. Just the 4 of us. The kids want a quiet Christmas. The kids. Always the kids. I said yes, that I understood, that it was no problem. I spent Christmas Eve alone, eating store-bought cookies and watching television. But 3 days later, I saw the pictures on Facebook. Daniel had hosted a huge dinner. Their friends were there. Jennifer's parents were there. Even their cousins who live out of state were there. Everyone was there. Except me. In the photos, everyone was smiling. The kids were wearing Santa hats. There was a giant tree. There were presents everywhere. There was a table full of food. And I didn't even know that party had happened. When I asked Daniel about it days later, he said, "Oh, it was a last-minute thing, Mom. We didn't want to bother you. They didn't want to include me." But I swallowed that lie just like I had swallowed all the others. I remembered when I turned 68 last year. I wasn't expecting much. I've never expected much. But Daniel called me in the morning and said, "Mom, we're picking you up today. We're going to celebrate." I put on my best blouse. I did my hair. I put on that lipstick I hardly ever use. I waited from 11 in the morning, noon, 1 in the afternoon, 2 in the afternoon. At 3, I called Daniel. He didn't answer. At 4 o'clock, he sent me a message. "Mom, sorry. Something came up with Jennifer's work. We'll do it tomorrow." Tomorrow never came. A week later, Daniel showed up with a wilted bouquet of flowers he had clearly bought at the grocery store. "Sorry, Mom, you know how it is." And I said yes, I understood. It didn't matter. But it did matter. Every slight mattered. Every lie mattered. Every time they made me feel like I was a burden, it mattered. I just didn't see it. Or I didn't want to see it. Because accepting that your son doesn't love you is accepting that something in you is broken. And I wasn't ready for that. I remembered all the times I loaned him money, not just the $5,000 for the business. Before that, it was $2,000 to fix the car. Before that, $1,500 for the kids' school uniforms. Before that, $800 for the dentist. Before that, $500 for some other emergency. They were always emergencies. It was always urgent. And I always said yes because a mother helps. A mother gives. A mother doesn't let her son suffer if she can prevent it. But Daniel was never suffering. Daniel had a brand new car. Daniel and Jennifer went out to restaurants on the weekends. Daniel had just replaced all the furniture in his living room. I know because I saw the pictures Jennifer posted. Pictures of her perfect life, of her perfect house, of her perfect children. And I commented on every photo. "So beautiful, dear. Such a blessing." And she never replied. Not a thank you, not a like, nothing. I remembered the time I got sick 4 months ago. A bad flu that left me in bed for 3 days. I called Daniel to tell him I couldn't get up, that I had a fever, that I needed someone to buy me medicine. "Mom, I'm in an important meeting. Can't you ask a neighbor?" A neighbor. He was asking me to beg a neighbor for help before he would come himself, before he would send Jennifer, before he would genuinely worry. In the end, it was Mrs. Henderson, my neighbor from the 3rd floor, who bought me medicine and made me some chicken soup. Mrs. Henderson, who barely knew me, showed more love in those 2 hours than my son had in 2 years. And when I told Daniel later, he said, "That's great that Mrs. Henderson was there. We were just so busy that week. Always busy. Always something more important. Always with a perfectly constructed excuse to make me feel like I was asking for too much by expecting a minimum of attention." I remembered Mother's Day this year. Daniel sent me flowers through a delivery service. They arrived at 10 in the morning with a card that said, "For the best mom, we love you." A generic message that probably came pre-written on the website. He didn't even take the time to write something personal, and the flowers were cheap. I could tell. Simple carnations, no roses. Nothing special. The kind of arrangement that costs $15. Meanwhile, I had given him $500 the month before for some expense for the kids. But I put those flowers in a vase. I took a picture of them. I posted it on my Facebook with the caption, "Thank you, my wonderful son, for these beautiful flowers." Because that's what mothers do, right? Pretend everything is fine. Pretend we are loved. Pretend our children value us. Because admitting the opposite is admitting we failed at the one thing a mother is supposed to achieve. being loved by her children. I remembered all the times the kids would ask me, "Grandma, when are you going to visit us?" And I would say, "When your dad invites me, sweetheart." And the child would say, "But I'm inviting you now." And then Jennifer's voice would call from the other room, "Kids, Grandma is very busy. Don't bother her. Busy." Me, who had nothing but time. Me, who would have walked barefoot over broken glass to spend an afternoon with those children. Busy was the code for "we don't want her here." And the kids grew up believing I was the distant grandmother, the one who didn't visit, the one who didn't call, when the truth was that every time I tried to get close, Jennifer built a new wall. Every time I offered to take them to the park, there was an excuse. Every time I offered to babysit, they already had plans. Every time I asked about their grades, their friends, their lives, the answers were short and cold, as if my questions were invasive, as if my interest was inappropriate. The living room grew completely dark. It was almost 7 o'clock at night. The dessert I had made was still in the kitchen. I threw it in the trash. I couldn't even look at it without feeling sick. Every piece of that cake represented my naivety, my stupidity, my denial, because I knew, somewhere deep down, I always knew something was wrong. But I chose not to see it. I chose to believe the lies because the truth was too painful, because to accept that your son is using you is to accept that you gave everything and received nothing. The phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Jennifer. "Carol, Daniel is very worried. Are you okay? Do you need us to come over?" Come over. As if they had ever come over without needing something. I read that message 3 times, and with each reading, I saw more clearly the venom hidden in those seemingly kind words. They weren't worried about me. They were worried because I was supposed to have signed those papers today. Today I was supposed to have fallen into the trap, and I had escaped. I didn't reply to Jennifer's message. I left the phone on the table and stared at the ceiling of my living room. That ceiling I knew by heart. That small crack in the corner I always promised to fix but never did. That water stain that appeared every winter. That ceiling that had watched over my sleepless nights, my lonely mornings, my moments of joy, and my days of sadness. That ceiling was more constant than my own son. The truth fell on me like ice water. It wasn't gradual. It wasn't gentle. It was brutal and complete. My son didn't love me. Maybe he never loved me. Or maybe he loved me when he was a child, when he needed me, when I was useful, but somewhere along the way, that love transformed into something else, into convenience, into habit, into opportunity, and finally, into this, into a plan to rob me, to erase me, to take the only thing I had left and leave me with nothing. I got up from the sofa and walked through my house, my little 2-bedroom house that I bought 20 years ago with the severance pay when the factory closed. This house that I cleaned and fixed with my own hands. This house where every piece of furniture has a story. The armchair I bought second-hand and upholstered myself. The table that belonged to my mother. The curtains I sewed at night after work. The plants in the window I care for as if they were my children. This house was going to be Daniel's. In a couple of days. If I had been more foolish. If I had trusted for one more minute. If I hadn't had an honest accountant to warn me in time. This house where I mourned my husband's death. Where I raised my son alone, where I survived poverty and loneliness, where I grew old believing that at least I had this, a safe roof over my head. All of this was going to disappear with one signature, with one lunch, with one well-constructed lie. I went into my room and opened the drawer where I keep my important documents. The deed to the house, the bank statements, the insurance policies, my will. Everything was there, organized. Because I am an organized woman. A woman who has always been responsible. A woman who worked since she was 15 and never owed a cent to anyone. A woman who broke her body in heavy labor so her son wouldn't have to. I took out my will. I wrote it 5 years ago. In it, I left everything to Daniel. The house. The savings. The small life insurance policy. Everything. Because he was my only son. My only family. The only person in the world who carried my blood and the name of my dead husband. I read every line of that document and felt something inside me break definitively, not with noise, not with drama, but with a deep, terrible silence. What kind of son does this? What kind of man plans to steal from his own mother? Not on impulse, not in a moment of desperation, but with time, with legal documents, with the help of his wife, with coldness, with calculation, as if I were a business, as if my life were a transaction, as if my 69 years of existing, of working, of loving, of sacrificing, meant absolutely nothing. I sat on the edge of my bed with the will in my hands. I thought about tearing it up, about burning it, about changing it right now. But I didn't. Because tearing up that paper wasn't going to change anything. The damage was already done. The betrayal already existed. The son I thought I had was never real. He was a fantasy I built because I needed to believe that all my suffering had been worth it, that all my sacrifices had created a good man, a grateful man, a man who honored his mother. But Daniel was not that man. Daniel was a stranger with my last name, a stranger who learned to smile at me at the right moments, a stranger who knew exactly what words to use to keep me hopeful, a stranger who measured every visit, every call, every gesture to get the most with the minimum effort. And I was so blind, so desperately blind. I put the will back in the drawer. Tomorrow I would go to Stephen's office to protect my assets. Tomorrow I would begin to legally dismantle any possibility of Daniel touching my inheritance. But tonight, this long, dark night, I just wanted to feel the complete pain. I wanted to let it pass through me, because I knew that after this night, nothing would ever be the same. After this night, I would be a different person. A person who no longer believed in fairy tales about the unconditional love of children. The phone rang again. This time it was a call, not a message. It was Daniel. I saw his name on the screen. I saw the picture I have of him, the one where he's smiling. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times, 4, until it cut off. Immediately he called again. I let it ring again until it cut off, and then again, and again. 5 calls in 10 minutes. That was his desperation. Not for me, but for his failed plan, for his interrupted theft. Another message arrived. This time, more direct. Mom, answer. I need to know you're okay. If you don't answer, I'm coming over to your house. A threat disguised as concern. If I didn't respond, he would come. And if he came, what would he do? Try to convince me? Bring the papers anyway? Invent another lie? I wrote back, each word like a heavy stone. I'm fine. I just need to rest. Don't come over. We'll talk tomorrow. Tomorrow. That word I always used to postpone confrontations, to avoid conflict, to keep the peace. But this tomorrow would be different. This tomorrow, I would be at Stephen's office, protecting what was mine. This tomorrow, I would start building legal walls that Daniel could never cross. This tomorrow, I would stop being the foolish mother and become something I never thought I'd have to be, my own defender. I lay down on the bed fully clothed. I didn't have the strength to put on my pajamas. I didn't have the strength for anything. I stared at the dark ceiling and thought about all the times I had slept in this bed, dreaming of a future where Daniel and I were close, where he visited me often, where the grandkids spent weekends with me, where I was the present grandmother, loved, important. That future was never going to exist. That future was another fantasy I had built to survive the loneliness. The reality was this. I was alone. I had always been alone. Since my husband died, loneliness was my only constant companion. But I disguised it as giving Daniel space. I disguised it as respecting his adult life. I disguised it as not being a meddling mother-in-law, when the truth was that they had pushed me out years ago, and I simply agreed to stay there. In the cold, in the distance, waiting for crumbs of attention that came less and less often. I closed my eyes but couldn't sleep. In my head, scenes replayed on a constant loop. Daniel as a child, asking me to read him a story. Daniel as a teenager, embarrassed when I picked him up from school in my cleaning uniform. Daniel as an adult, introducing me to Jennifer with a forced smile, as if to say, "This is my mother. I'm sorry about her. Daniel a month ago, asking to borrow $500 while he was planning to steal $42,000 from me. Every image hurt. Every memory was a new wound on top of old ones that had never healed. But there was something else under the pain. Something small and hard that was beginning to grow in my chest. Something that wasn't sadness or self-pity. It was anger. A cold, clear anger. An anger that didn't scream but observed. An anger that didn't destroy but built. An anger that said, I am not going to allow this. I will not be a victim. I will not disappear just because they want me to. I opened my eyes in the darkness. I wasn't crying anymore. The tears had dried at some point I didn't notice. My breathing was regular. My mind was clear. Clearer than it had been in years. Because finally, after so much time living in denial, I saw the complete truth. And the truth, though painful, was also liberating. I didn't have to pretend anymore. I didn't have to justify. I didn't have to torture myself wondering what I had done wrong. I hadn't done anything wrong. I was the best mother I could be with what I had. I gave everything I could give. I loved with every fiber of my being. The problem was never me. The problem was Daniel and Jennifer and their greed and their coldness and their ability to look at a 69-year-old woman and think, how can we take advantage of her, instead of, how can we care for her? I got out of bed at 3 a.m. I went to the kitchen and made myself a strong coffee. I sat at the table where I had eaten alone so many nights, the same table where I had studied with Daniel when he was a boy, the same table where I had cried over bills I couldn't pay, the same table where I had celebrated every one of my birthdays alone for the past few years. And at that table, at 3 o'clock on a Monday morning, I made a decision. I was going to fight, not with screams or scandals, not with cheap revenge or drama, but with intelligence, with strategy, with the same strength that had kept me alive all these years. Daniel had underestimated his mother. He thought I was weak. He thought I was stupid. He thought I would sign any paper he put in front of me just to feel his love for 5 minutes. He was wrong. And now he was about to find out who Carol Rogers really was. Not the submissive mother, but the woman who survived everything, and who was not going to give up now. At 8 a.m, I was knocking on Stephen's office door. He was waiting for me with fresh coffee and that look of concern that only people who genuinely care have. I sat across from his desk, and there they were, the documents. A pile of perfectly ordered papers that represented my son's betrayal in black ink on white paper. Stephen didn't say anything at first. He just pushed the folder toward me gently, as if it were a bomb that could explode at any moment. I opened the folder with hands that no longer trembled. The night had burned away all the fear I had left. Now there was only clarity. The first document was a general power of attorney. I read every line. In that paper, I supposedly authorized Daniel Rogers to act on my behalf in all legal, financial, and property matters, to sell, to buy, to transfer, to dispose of everything that was mine as if it were his. And at the end, there was a space for my signature, an empty space that was supposed to have been filled today. Is this legal? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Stephen leaned back in his chair and sighed. If you had signed it voluntarily, yes. That's the problem, Carol. These documents are perfectly drafted. An expensive lawyer made them. Someone who knows exactly what to do to make it all look clean and legal. Someone expensive. That meant Daniel had spent money on this. Money that was probably from the $500 I had loaned him last month. The second document was worse. It was a deed of sale for my house. In it, I supposedly was selling my property to Daniel for the sum of $1, as if my house were worthless, as if the 20 years of monthly payments meant nothing, as if the sweat and tears that every square foot cost could be summed up in a single coin. And under the amount, there was a note that said, "Sale between family members for love and mutual consideration." Love. That word made me sick. Stephen pointed to another paragraph. Look here. It says you are selling the house because you wish to secure your son's future, and that you are doing so free of any external pressure or influence that protects them legally. If you ever tried to contest it, they would say you did it voluntarily out of a mother's love. Every word was calculated. Every phrase was a trap. This wasn't Daniel's work alone. This had Jennifer's fingerprints all over it. The third document was a bank authorization. With this paper, Daniel could access all my accounts, withdraw money, close accounts, transfer funds, all without needing me to be present. How long have they been planning this? I asked. Stephen pulled out another paper. I found something else. Daniel came to see me 3 months ago for the first time. He didn't know then that I was your accountant. He asked me hypothetically how he could help his elderly mother better manage her finances. Elderly. 3 months. This wasn't new. This had been brewing for a while. Stephen continued. I told him the best thing was to talk to you directly, that you could make your own decisions. He left that day without hiring me. But 2 weeks ago he came back, this time with all these documents already prepared. He just needed someone to review them and certify they were well drafted. He didn't know I knew you. When I saw your name on the papers, I almost fell out of my chair. I looked at Stephen with a gratitude I couldn't express in words. If he hadn't warned me, right now I would be signing my sentence. I would be handing over everything. I would be left with nothing. What do I do now? Stephen already had new papers prepared. First, we protect everything legally. We are going to draft documents that nullify any future attempt at appropriation. Second, we change all your bank passwords. Third, we put alerts on all your accounts. And fourth, you need to decide what you want to do about Daniel. That last question hit me. What did I want to do about Daniel? Report him? Confront him? Cut off all communication? Forgive him? Every option seemed impossible, because every option meant accepting that my life as I knew it was over. Stephen let me think while he prepared the new documents. I stared at those papers of betrayal. So perfect, so legal, so cold. I want to confront him, I said finally. But not yet. First, I need to protect myself. Then I need to understand how far this goes. Stephen nodded. There's something else you should know. I did a little digging. Your daughter-in-law, Jennifer Marshall, has a history. 6 years ago, she tried something similar with her own mother. Convinced the woman to put a house in her name. The mother was left with nothing and now lives with a sister. Jennifer sold the house and never gave her a cent. The air left my lungs. Jennifer had done this before. She had already destroyed one mother. And now she was coming for me. And Daniel knew. He had to know. That meant my son wasn't just an accomplice. He was an active participant. He had seen what Jennifer did to her own mother and thought, let's do the same to mine. That revelation was worse than all the others, because it eliminated any possibility that Daniel was being manipulated or fooled. He knew exactly what he was doing. Give me the papers, I told Stephen. I'm going to sign whatever is necessary to protect myself. We spent the next 2 hours building legal fortresses around my assets. I signed documents establishing that any transfer of property required the presence of 2 witnesses and an independent lawyer. I signed papers that blocked any future power of attorney. I signed authorizations for the bank to call me personally before approving any transaction over $100. We changed all my passwords. The banks, the email, social media, everything. Stephen taught me how to activate 2-step verification. He explained how to recognize phishing attempts. He gave me the number of a lawyer who specialized in elder abuse cases. Because that's what this is, Carol. This is financial elder abuse. It's a crime, and if you wanted to, you could press charges. Press charges against my own son? The idea turned my stomach. But it also made me think, if I did nothing, how many other mothers would suffer the same? How many elderly women were right now signing papers without understanding they were giving away their entire lives? I put the lawyer's number in my purse. I didn't know if I would use it, but knowing the option existed gave me a strange sense of power. I left Stephen's office at 11 in the morning. The sun was shining brightly. The street was full of people coming and going with their normal lives. And I was a different person. I was no longer Carol, the naive mother. I was Carol, the protected woman, the woman who knew the truth, the woman who had built walls where before there were only open doors. My phone had 17 missed calls from Daniel and 11 messages. I didn't read them. I wasn't ready yet. I got home and locked the door. Something I never did during the day. But now everything was different. Now I knew I had enemies, and one of them was my own son. I sat in the living room with a new notebook I had bought on the way. On the first page I wrote, "Evidence." Because if I was going to confront Daniel, I needed to have everything clear, every lie, every manipulation, every sign I had ignored. I started writing dates. The day he asked for the $5,000 and never returned it. The day he canceled my birthday. The Christmas where they excluded me from the party. Every canceled visit. Every excuse. Every time Jennifer kept me from the grandkids. Page after page filled with evidence of a clear, deliberate pattern. These weren't coincidences. It was a plan of progressive estrangement. First, they distanced me emotionally. Then came the financial theft. I took out my phone and started reviewing our messages. I had saved them all. Every conversation where Daniel asked me for money with promises to pay it back soon. "Mom, it's just $2,000. I'll pay you back next month. I promise." That was a year ago. I never saw that money. I took screenshots of everything. I saved them in a special folder, evidence, proof that this didn't start yesterday. This was a pattern years in the making. I checked my bank account online. I made a list of every transfer I had made to Daniel in the last 3 years. I added it all up, $12,800. Almost $13,000 in loans that were never repaid. And I hadn't counted. I hadn't demanded it back. Because a mother doesn't keep score, I thought. A mother gives without expecting anything in return. But Daniel was keeping score. Daniel knew exactly how much I had and how much he could get out of me before going for it all. I called the bank. I asked to speak to a manager. I explained my situation without giving many details. I just said I needed to protect my account from unauthorized access. The manager was kind and efficient. She helped me set up a secret keyword that would be required for any changes to my account. She gave me her direct number. She said, "Mrs. Rogers, I'm sorry you're going through this. We see these cases more often than people think. Seniors being scammed by their own children. You did the right thing by protecting yourself. Seniors being scammed by their own children. That was me. That was my case. I was a statistic, a number in some report on financial elder abuse. The idea both enraged and saddened me. I hung up the phone and kept working. I searched online for information about Jennifer Marshall. I found her social media profile. Pictures of her perfect life, her decorated house, her trips, her dinners at expensive restaurants. All paid for. With what money? I wondered. With Daniel's money. And Daniel's money came, in part, from me. I kept searching. I found old articles from local newspapers. And there it was. A court case from 6 years ago. Jennifer Marshall sued by her own mother for misappropriation of assets. The case was closed because the mother withdrew the lawsuit. Probably out of shame. Probably because reporting your own daughter is almost impossible emotionally. Probably for the same reasons I was now hesitating to report Daniel. I printed everything. The articles, the bank statements, the messages, the dates, the names. I put together a complete file. If I was going to see Daniel, I wanted to have every piece of evidence ready. I didn't want him to be able to deny anything. I didn't want him to be able to turn the situation around and make me feel guilty. This time, I had the power. This time, I had the documented truth. This time, I was not going to let him manipulate me. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Mrs. Carol Rogers?" a male voice asked. "Yes, this is she." The voice continued. "This is Mr. Davies. Stephen referred your case to me. I need you to come to my office as soon as possible. There is something else you need to know about your son's plan." My heart sped up. Something else? What could be worse than what I already knew? I arrived at Mr. Davies' office at 3 in the afternoon. He was a man in his 50s with a serious face and a direct manner. I sat in front of him and noticed he had a folder with my name on it. "Mrs. Rogers, I did some research after Stephen told me about your situation, and I found something disturbing." He pulled some papers from the folder. "Your son and daughter-in-law applied for a loan 2 months ago, a loan for $30,000. Do you know what they put up as collateral?" I shook my head, though something inside me already knew the answer. They put up your house, Mrs. Rogers. Your house? The one that is still in your name. They submitted false documents claiming the house was already theirs. The bank rejected the loan because when they verified, they found the property is still registered in your name. But they tried to use your house as collateral without your knowledge. That is fraud. Fraud. The word echoed in the office like a gunshot. If they had managed to get you to sign those papers on Sunday, their plan was to go back to the bank on Monday with the new deed, get the $30,000, and disappear. You would have been left with a mortgaged house you didn't know was mortgaged and with empty accounts. Mr. Davies looked at me with a mixture of compassion and professional anger. Mrs. Rogers, this isn't just a son who wants to inherit early. This is a well-planned criminal scheme. I sat in silence, processing the information. $30,000, plus my $42,000 in savings, plus the value of my house. Daniel and Jennifer were planning to leave me on the street without a cent, and I would have signed everything with a smile on my face, believing I was doing something good for my family. Mr. Davies continued, I have contacts at the bank. I got copies of the loan application. Here are the forged signatures. Here is the fraudulent document. This is enough for a criminal complaint. I took the papers with trembling hands. There was my signature. But it wasn't my signature. It was a pretty good imitation, but not perfect. Someone had practiced copying my signature. Someone had had access to my documents to study how I signed. And that someone had to be Daniel. He was the only one who had seen my personal papers. He was the only one who had been in my house with access to my documents. What should I do? I asked in a broken voice. Mr. Davies leaned back in his chair. That's up to you, Mrs. Rogers. Legally, you have all the tools to press charges. This is fraud, forgery of documents, and attempted misappropriation. Your son could face serious criminal charges. But I understand that this is your son, and that decision is not easy. It wasn't easy. It was impossible. It was the most painful decision in the world. For now, the lawyer continued, the most important thing is that you are protected. The documents you signed with Stephen are solid. Your assets are legally shielded. Your son cannot touch anything. But you also need to decide if you want to confront him or simply cut contact. And you must decide if you want this to have legal consequences or if you prefer to keep it private. 3 options. None of them good. All of them painful. All of them meant accepting that my family as I knew it was dead. I left that office with more information than I wanted to have. The sun was beginning to set. I walked through the streets of my neighborhood without any direction. I passed the park where I used to take Daniel when he was a child. I sat on a bench and watched the young mothers playing with their children. They all looked so happy. They all seemed so sure that their children would love them forever. And I had been one of them. I had been that mother who believed love was enough. That believed giving your best guaranteed receiving something in return. But it wasn't true. You could give everything and receive betrayal. You could love with every fiber of your being and be used. You could sacrifice your entire life and end up being seen as an exploitable resource. A mother's love guaranteed nothing, except pain, if you chose the wrong child, or if your child chose the wrong partner, or if life simply decided to teach you this lesson in the most brutal way possible. I got home after dark. I turned on all the lights because the darkness made me feel even more alone than I already was. I made myself tea that I wasn't going to drink. I sat at the kitchen table with all the evidence spread out in front of me. The forged documents, the bank statements, the screenshots, the dates, the names. It was all there. The complete documented truth. Now all that was left was to decide what to do with it. I could ignore it all. I could pretend I never knew. I could continue to be the mother who calls on Sundays and sends gifts at Christmas. I could swallow this betrayal like I had swallowed all the previous ones. But if I did that, who would I be? A coward? A fool? A woman with no dignity? No. I had been that woman for too long. I had accepted too many crumbs. I had justified too many absences. I could cut contact completely, block his number, change my will, disappear from his life just as he had tried to make me disappear from mine. But that didn't feel right either, because it meant he would face no consequences. It meant he could go on with his life as if nothing had happened. It meant he would never have to face what he did. And I needed him to face it. I needed to look him in the eye and show him that I knew, that I always knew, that I wasn't as stupid as he thought, or I could confront him, face to face, with all the evidence, with all the truth. I could give him the chance to explain himself, even though there was no possible explanation. I could see if there was anything left of that little boy who used to hug me with his small hands. I could look for any trace of remorse in his eyes, and if I didn't find it, at least I would know I tried, that I gave him one last chance to be the son I needed him to be. That last option scared me more than all the others, because it meant opening the door to the greatest pain. It meant facing his rejection directly. It meant hearing him say out loud what his actions had already screamed. But it was also the only option that gave me peace. The only one that wouldn't leave me wondering what if for the rest of my days. I picked up my phone. I had 32 missed calls from Daniel now. Dozens of messages, some worried, some annoyed. The last ones almost threatening. "Mom, if you don't answer, I'm going to call the police to check on you." The police? How ironic. He was threatening to call the police on me while I had enough evidence for the police to arrest him. I took 3 deep breaths. Then I wrote a message. "Daniel, I need to talk to you. Come to my house on Saturday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Just you, without Jennifer, without the kids. This is important." I sent the message before I could change my mind. The reply came in less than a minute. "Mom, thank God. We were so worried. Are you okay? Why can't I bring Jennifer?" I replied firmly. "Just you. Saturday at 2, or we don't talk ever again." I had never spoken to him like that. I had never set conditions. I had never threatened to cut contact. But this time was different. This time, I had the power. I saw the 3 dots that indicated he was typing. They disappeared. They reappeared. Finally, his reply came. "Okay, Mom. I'll be there. Just tell me you're okay, please." I didn't answer him. I left the message on read. Let him wonder. Let him feel a little of the anxiety I had felt my whole life waiting for his calls. The next 3 days were strange. I cleaned my house like never before. I washed curtains. I polished the furniture. I organized every corner, not because I wanted to impress Daniel, but because I needed to do something with my hands. I needed to keep my mind busy so I wouldn't go crazy thinking about what was coming. Mrs. Henderson, my neighbor, knocked on my door on Thursday. "Carol, are you okay? You seem different." I smiled at her tiredly. "I'm fine, Alma. Just preparing for something important." She looked at me with those wise eyes that only women who have lived a lot have. "It has to do with your son." I hadn't told her anything, but neighbors always know. They always notice. I nodded without giving details. Alma put her hand on mine. "Carol, I don't know what happened. But I know you are a good woman, and I know that sometimes our children fail us in ways we never imagined. If you need anything, anything at all, knock on my door, day or night." Her words broke me a little. It was the kind of love Daniel should have shown, and that a near stranger of a neighbor was giving me. On Friday, I prepared everything for Saturday. I organized the documents in chronological order. I practiced in front of the mirror what I was going to say. "Daniel, I know what you were planning to do." No, too direct. "Daniel, we need to talk about some documents." Too soft. "Daniel, why did you try to steal from me?" Too aggressive. In the end, I decided I wasn't going to practice anymore. The words would come out when they had to. I made coffee for 2. I took out the good cups, the ones I only use on special occasions. This definitely qualified as a special occasion. On Saturday, I woke up at 6 in the morning. Even though Daniel was coming at 2, I showered. I put on a simple but dignified dress. A brown color. I did my hair. I put on a little makeup. Not because I wanted to look good for him, but because I wanted to feel strong. And when I look put together, I feel more confident. I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was no longer the same one from a week ago. This woman's eyes were harder. Her mouth was firmer. Her back was straighter. At 5 minutes to 2, I put all the documents on the living room table. I made 3 piles, one with the evidence of his lies and unpaid loans, another with the fraudulent documents from the robbery plan, and the third with the papers from the attempt to mortgage my house. In the center of the table, I placed a photograph. It was from when Daniel was 8 years old. We were hugging in front of this very house the day we bought it. We were both smiling. We both looked happy. I put that photo there to remind us both of who we once were. At 2 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would come out of my chest. I walked to the door. I took a deep breath, and I opened it. Daniel was standing on the doorstep with a nervous smile. He was wearing a white shirt and jeans. He looked tired. He had dark circles under his eyes. He probably hadn't slept well, wondering why I had summoned him like this. "Hi, Mom," he said, and tried to hug me. I took a step back. He noticed the rejection, and his smile faltered. "Come in," I said in a neutral voice. He entered, looking around as if searching for signs of what was happening. "Sit down," I instructed, pointing to the sofa across from the table where I had laid out all the documents. He sat down slowly. His eyes fell on the papers, and I watched his face change. First confusion, then recognition. Finally, fear. "Mom, what is all this?" His voice tried to sound casual, but it was trembling. I sat in the chair across from him. The table with the evidence, between us, like a battlefield. "That's exactly what you are going to explain to me, Daniel." I picked up the first pile of documents. The bank statements with all the transfers marked in yellow. $12,800, I said, showing him the papers. "That's what I loaned you in the last 3 years. Loans you never paid back. Loans you promised to pay and never did." Daniel tried to interrupt, but I held up my hand. "No, you can talk when I'm finished. $12,800 is not a small amount of money for a woman living on a $450 a month pension. I had to stop buying my medication sometimes. I had to eat less. I had to sacrifice. But I did it because you are my son, because I love you, because a mother makes sacrifices." Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but I continued. I picked up the second pile, the fraudulent documents, the power of attorney, the deed of sale, the bank authorization. I put them in front of him one by one, like cards in a deadly game. "These are the documents you were going to make me sign last Sunday, the day of the lunch, which was never a lunch. It was a trap to steal everything I have, my house, my savings, my entire life, all for $1 and a signed piece of paper." His face turned white, completely white. "Mom, I can explain." His voice was barely a whisper. "Then explain," I said with a calm I didn't know I possessed. "Explain to me how a son plans to steal from his own mother. Explain how you forge documents. Explain how you practice copying my signature. Explain how you look me in the eyes and tell me you love me while planning to leave me on the street." The words came out of me like knives, each one sharp, each one precise. Daniel ran his hands over his face. When he lowered them, his eyes were red. "It wasn't my idea," he said finally. "It was Jennifer. She." I laughed. It was a bitter, dry laugh. "Jennifer? Oh, of course. Blame your wife. As if you don't have a brain of your own. As if you weren't present for every step of this plan." I picked up the third pile of documents. The mortgage attempt, the forged signatures. Was this Jennifer's idea too? When you tried to mortgage my house without me knowing? When you forged my signature to get $30,000? He stood up. "How do you know all this? Who told you?" Now there was anger in his voice. Not remorse, not shame, anger at being caught. "Sit down," I ordered with a voice of steel. Saturday, I remained standing. I wanted to look down on him. I wanted him to feel how small he was in this moment. How do I know? Because I'm not the stupid old woman you two think I am. Because I have people who care about me more than my own son. Because Stephen is my accountant, and when you came to him asking for help with your fraudulent documents, he warned me. I saw the realization hit him. Stephen. His perfect plan had failed because of one detail he didn't foresee. That the accountant he hired was my accountant. The irony was almost comical. "Daniel," I said, sitting down again, "I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to answer me with the truth. Did you ever love me? Was I ever anything more to you than a source of money? The tears started to roll down his face. But I didn't believe his tears anymore. I had seen too much. Mom, of course I love you. You're my mother. His voice was breaking. But we're desperate. We have debts. Jennifer's business failed. We owe money to dangerous people. We needed that house. We needed that money. It was going to be temporary. We were going to take care of you. We were going to. I cut him off by slamming my hand on the table. Temporary? You were going to take care of me? Daniel, these documents would have left me with nothing. No house, no savings, nothing. Where was I supposed to live? On the street? In a nursing home? Or were you just hoping I would conveniently disappear? The silence that followed was the answer. He had never thought about that. Or worse, he had, and he didn't care. Do you know what the saddest part of all this is? I continued. It's not that you tried to steal from me. It's not that you forged my signature. It's not even that you used me my whole life. The saddest part is that I would have given you everything voluntarily if you had just asked me. If you had come to me and said, Mom, I'm in trouble, I need help, I would have sold my house. I would have emptied my accounts. I would have slept under a bridge if it meant saving you. Those words broke him. He began to sob. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. Jennifer convinced me. She told me you wouldn't notice. That you'd be better off. What? I stared at him. Jennifer did the same thing to her own mother 6 years ago. You knew. I saw in his eyes that he did know. You knew. And you still thought it was a good idea to do the same to me. Your own mother. The woman who carried you for 9 months. Who worked 2 jobs so you could go to college. Who sold her dead mother's jewelry to pay for your tuition. I got up and walked to the window. I couldn't look at him anymore. I had to decide this week whether to report you, whether to call the police and make you face legal consequences for fraud and forgery. The lawyer told me I have a strong case. That you could go to jail. I heard him choke on a sob behind me. Please, Mom. No. The kids. Think about the kids. I spun around so fast he flinched. Now you think about the kids? When you were planning to leave their grandmother homeless, you didn't think about them. When you kept me away from them, you didn't think about them. Do not use my grandchildren as a shield. You never thought about them. You only thought about yourself. I sat down again. I was tired. So tired. I'm not going to report you. Not because you don't deserve it. You do. But because I am not like you. I don't destroy my family, no matter what. But this is what is going to happen. I pulled out other papers. The new documents Stephen had helped me prepare. My house is now legally protected. You can never touch it. My accounts have blocks and alerts. You can never access them. My will has been changed. You're inheriting nothing. Everything is going to a foundation that helps elderly victims of family abuse. I watched as each word hit him like a punch. Daniel, you chose money over me. Now you live with that choice. I don't want to see you anymore. I don't want your calls. I don't want your visits. I want nothing from you. He stood up, desperate. Mom, you can't do this. I'm your only son. We're family. I stood up too and looked him straight in the eye. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't betray. You stopped being my family the day you decided I was a problem to be solved instead of a mother to be loved. I walked to the door and opened it. Get out, and don't come back. Daniel stood there, crying, shaking. Mom, please, give me another chance. I can change. I'll leave Jennifer. I stopped him with a look. There's nothing left to save here, Daniel. You destroyed it all. You, alone. Now live with it. He took a few steps toward the door, but stopped. And if the kids ask about you? That question almost broke me. Almost. Tell them the truth. Tell them their father tried to steal from their grandmother, and she had to protect herself. Or lie to them. You're an expert at that by now. He walked out the door without looking back. I heard his footsteps going down the stairs. I heard his car engine start. I heard him drive away. I closed the door and locked it. I stood there, leaning against the door, until my legs gave out, and I slid to the floor. I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. I cried for the son I lost, for the family I never had, for the years wasted on illusions, for the grandchildren I would no longer see grow up. But I also cried with relief, because I had finally spoken the truth. I had finally defended myself. I had finally chosen my dignity over my need to be loved. I cried until I had no tears left, and when I got up from the floor an hour later, I was a different woman, a woman who had survived the worst, a woman who had fought and won, a woman who no longer needed anyone's love to know her own worth. My own respect was enough. The first few days after the confrontation were the hardest. The house felt emptier than ever, but it was a different kind of empty. Before, it was an emptiness of unfulfilled hope. Now, it was an emptiness of liberation. I no longer waited for calls that never came. I no longer made excuses for a son who didn't love me. I no longer lived in a lie. I lived in the truth, and the truth, though painful, was also clean. Mrs. Henderson knocked on my door on Tuesday morning with a hot stew. I don't know what happened on Saturday, but I heard crying, and I know you haven't come out since. I tried to tell her I was fine, but she just walked past me and put the stew in the kitchen. Carol, you don't have to tell me anything, but you don't have to be alone either. She stayed all afternoon. We had coffee. We watched a ridiculous soap opera. We laughed at the silly dialogue, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. She told me she had 3 children. 2 lived far away, and 1 had died young. Sometimes I think the one who died was the only one who really loved me, she said sadly. The others call me on Christmas and my birthday. That's it. So I understand the pain of a mother who gives everything and gets crumbs. Her words comforted me, not because her pain was the same as mine, but because it reminded me that I wasn't alone in this, that there were millions of mothers living this same silent betrayal. On Wednesday, I called Stephen to thank him. Carol, how are you? Did you talk to Daniel? I told him everything. Every word of the confrontation, every document shown, every tear shed. Stephen listened in silence, and when I finished, he said, "You did the right thing. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you saved yourself. And that takes more courage than most people have." His words gave me strength. They reminded me that choosing my dignity wasn't selfishness, it was survival. On Thursday, I started reorganizing my life. Literally, I took all the pictures of Daniel off the walls. I didn't throw them away. I couldn't. But I packed them in a box in the closet. I took the emergency number off the refrigerator. It used to say, "In case of emergency, call Daniel." Now it listed Alma's number and Stephen's number. I changed the priorities in my life because my priorities had betrayed me. I found a drawer with drawings Daniel had made as a child. Colorful hearts, houses with chimneys, happy families. "I love you, Mom," written in crooked letters. Those drawings were from a boy I knew, a boy who loved me sincerely. But that boy didn't exist anymore. He had become a man I didn't recognize. I packed the drawings away with the photos, memories of a life that was no longer mine. On Friday, I left my house for the first time in days. I walked through the farmer's market. I bought fresh flowers for my living room. I bought ingredients to cook something I liked. Not what Daniel liked, not what I used to make while waiting for his visits, but something for me. A roast chicken with herbs, roasted potatoes, a fresh salad. I cooked with music playing. I set the table nicely, and I ate dinner alone, but not sad. I ate in peace. That night, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. "Mrs. Carroll?" It was a young woman's voice. "Yes, this is she." There was a silence, and then, "My name is Gilda, Jennifer's mother, her real mother. I don't know if Daniel told you about me." My heart sped up. "No, he didn't tell me anything." Gilda sighed deeply. I figured. "Mrs. Carroll, I heard from a mutual acquaintance what happened. What my daughter and your son planned to do to you. I needed to call you." I sat down slowly. "You're the woman Jennifer stole her house from all those years ago." Another long pause. "Yes, and I wanted to tell you that you did the right thing by protecting yourself." "I didn't. I signed everything they put in front of me because I didn't want to believe my own daughter could do that to me. And I was left with nothing. Literally nothing. I live with my sister in a spare room now. At 72 years old. No house. No savings. Nothing. Her voice was breaking, but she continued. You were stronger than me. You defended yourself. And please, don't feel guilty. Our children made choices. Horrible choices. But it's not our fault. We gave love. They chose betrayal. That difference is important. Don't carry their guilt on top of your pain. I cried listening to her. I cried because her words were exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you, was all I could say. Thank you for calling. Gilda gave me her number. If you ever need to talk to someone who understands exactly what you're going through, call me. Anytime. We hung up, and I held the phone in my hand for a long time. Gilda had lost everything. And still, she had the generosity to call a stranger to offer comfort. That was love. Real love. Not the manipulative, conditional love Daniel had given me, but genuine, selfless love from a woman who understood my pain because she had lived it. On Saturday, 1 week after the confrontation, I woke up different, lighter, as if a weight I had carried for years had finally fallen off. I realized I hadn't checked my phone in the morning, hoping for messages from Daniel. I hadn't planned my day around the possibility of him calling. I hadn't lived my life for him. For the first time in decades, my life was completely mine. Alma invited me to a group of friends who met on Saturdays to knit and chat. I hesitated at first, but then I thought, why not? I went. There were 6 women, all over 60. All with stories of absent children, of family that hurt, of loneliness chosen over toxic company, and all of them surviving, all of them finding joy in small things. In genuine friendships, in days without drama, in peace. One of them, Teresa, told me something that stuck with me. Carol, blood makes you related, but respect and love make you family. And sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you were given. She was right. These women, whom I barely knew, showed me more genuine affection than Daniel had in years. They asked me how I was and actually wanted to know. They helped me without expecting anything in return. They included me because they wanted my company, not because they needed something from me. I started going to that group every Saturday. I learned to knit. We made scarves to donate to a shelter. We cooked together. We celebrated birthdays. We visited each other when someone was sick. We built a support network that was stronger than any blood tie. And slowly, very slowly, the hole that Daniel had left began to fill. Not with another person, but with my own self-love, with my own company, with the certainty that I was worthy, with or without a son, with or without family. I was worthy. I officially changed my will. Everything would go to the foundation for the protection of abused elders. The lawyer congratulated me. Mrs. Rogers, this is going to help a lot of people. Your pain is going to be transformed into protection for others. That idea gave me purpose. My suffering hadn't been in vain if I could prevent other mothers from going through the same thing. I signed the papers with a steady hand. This was my legacy. Not Daniel, but this. Real help for real people. The months passed. I never heard from Daniel again. Not one call. Not one message. Not even on my birthday. That absence confirmed everything. He never really loved me. He only loved what he could get from me. And when that source dried up, I ceased to exist for him. It hurt. I'm not going to lie. But it was a clean pain. A healing pain. Not like the pain before, which only got more infected with every new lie. My house didn't feel empty anymore. Now I had real visitors. Friends who came for coffee. Alma who brought desserts. The knitting group that sometimes met in my living room. Genuine laughter, real conversations. Human connections that didn't depend on blood but on mutual respect. This was my family now. A family I chose. A family that chose me back. And that, I discovered, was worth more than any forced genetic tie. It's been 8 months since that Saturday. 8 months since I confronted Daniel. 8 months since I chose my dignity over my need to be loved by my son, and although the pain never completely disappears, I can say that I now live in peace. A peace I didn't know when I was living, waiting for crumbs of affection. A peace that comes from knowing I did the right thing, that I defended myself, that I did not allow them to erase me. My life is different now, smaller in some ways. I no longer have a son to call. I no longer have grandchildren to visit. I no longer have that fantasy of the united family at Christmas. But my life is also bigger in other ways. I have true friends. I have days without anxiety. I have nights where I sleep soundly, knowing my house is safe, that my savings are protected, that no one is planning to rob me while I sleep trusting. The knitting group became my family. We celebrate everything together. Birthdays, holidays, just a random Tuesday for no special reason. We take care of each other when someone is sick. We lend each other money without expecting it back. We listen to each other without judgment. This is family. This is love. Not Daniel's conditional love that only existed when I had something to give him, but genuine love that exists just because. Alma told me a month ago, "Carol, ever since all this happened, you seem more alive. It's strange to say, because I know you're suffering, but it's as if you were finally freed from something that was slowly killing you." She's right. Living in denial was consuming me. Pretending my son loved me when he clearly didn't. Justifying every slight, every lie, every absence. That was more painful than accepting the truth and moving on. I started volunteering at the Foundation for the Protection of Abused Elders. The same foundation that will inherit everything when I die. I work there twice a week. I help other seniors who are going through family abuse. I tell them my story. I show them that it is possible to survive, that it is possible to rebuild, that a child's love does not define your worth as a person or as a mother. I met so many women with similar stories. Sons who stole, daughters who manipulated, families that betrayed. And every single one of them blamed themselves. What did I do wrong? Where did I fail? Why am I not enough? I tell them the same thing I now tell myself. You did nothing wrong. You gave love. They chose betrayal. That difference is crucial. We cannot control the choices of others. We can only control how we respond. One afternoon in September, I was at the market buying vegetables when I saw Daniel. It was the first time in 8 months. He was alone. He looked tired, older. Our eyes met for a second. I saw something in his gaze. Regret? Shame? Pain? I don't know. And the truth is, it doesn't matter anymore. I looked away and kept shopping. My heart beat fast, but I didn't collapse. I didn't run to him. I didn't speak to him. I just went on with my life. Because that's what I do now. I move forward. I don't know if Daniel truly regrets it. I don't know if he ever understood the damage he caused. I don't know if Jennifer is still manipulating him or if he finally opened his eyes. And I've reached a point where those questions no longer keep me up at night. He made his choices. I made mine. Our paths separated. And it's okay that way. Not every story has a happy ending of reconciliation. Sometimes the happy ending is simply finding peace in the distance. I changed many things in my life. I started taking painting classes, something I always wanted to do but never had time for because I was busy being the perfect mother to a son who didn't appreciate it. I discovered I'm pretty good at painting landscapes. I have several of my paintings in my living room now. Landscapes of places I've never been but would like to go. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll travel. Maybe I'll use some of my savings to see the ocean, to see mountains, to live a little before it's too late. I also started writing. Not a book or anything formal, just a journal where I write my thoughts, my feelings, my healing process. Maybe someday someone will read it and find comfort. Maybe another mother who is going through the same thing will read my words and feel less alone. Maybe my pain will serve to light someone else's path. And if that happens, then it will all have been worth it. I've learned that a mother's love is the purest and most dangerous thing that exists. Pure because you give without expecting anything in return. Dangerous because that generosity can be exploited by unscrupulous people, even if those people are your own son. I learned that loving does not mean allowing abuse. That setting boundaries is not a lack of love. That saying no more is sometimes the most important act of self-love you can do. If I could talk to the Carol from a year ago, I would tell her, everything is going to be okay. You are going to go through hell. You are going to cry until you think you have no tears left. You are going to question everything about yourself. But on the other side of that pain is freedom. There is peace, there is a version of you that is stronger, wiser, more complete. A version that doesn't need anyone's validation to know her worth. Today is Saturday. The knitting group is coming in an hour. Teresa is bringing her famous carrot cake. Alma promised to teach us a new stitch. Gilda, Jennifer's mother, comes now too. We became close friends. We share the unique pain of being betrayed by our children. But we also share the joy of having survived. Of having chosen to live instead of just existing, waiting for love that never came. I made coffee. I took out the good cups. The same ones I used the day of the confrontation with Daniel, but now I use them for something better. To celebrate real friendships, to honor genuine connections, to toast to women who hold each other up when the world tries to tear them down. I look around my house, the walls I painted a new color, the plants that are blooming in every window, the paintings I did myself. This house is mine, truly mine. And no one is going to take it from me. I look out the window and see the clear sky. It's a beautiful day, and I think of all the mothers who are right now where I was 8 months ago, suffering in silence, justifying the unjustifiable, loving someone who doesn't love them back. And I want to tell them, you are enough. You were always enough. The problem was never you. You have the right to protect yourself. You have the right to say, stop. You have the right to choose your peace over their convenience. Life after betrayal is possible. It won't be the life you imagined. It won't be the family you dreamed of. But it can be good. It can be full. It can be yours in a way it never was when you lived for others. I am Carol Rogers. I am 69 years old. I am the mother of a son who betrayed me, and I am a survivor of my own love. And that, I've discovered, is enough. The doorbell rings. My friends are here. My chosen family is here. My real life is here. I open the door with a smile, a genuine smile that I don't have to fake. And as I hug them and we begin our Saturday afternoon, I think, this is happiness. Not the perfect happiness of fairy tales, but the real happiness of a woman who survived the storm and is now dancing in the rain. And you, who are reading this. You, who might be going through something similar. You, who feel that your family has betrayed you. You, who wonder if you were ever worth it. Let me tell you, you are worthy. You always were. And you deserve true love. Love that doesn't hurt. Love that doesn't steal. Love that doesn't betray. And if you can't find it in your blood family, it's okay to create a family of the heart. And you? Did you ever feel like they tried to erase you from your own story? Did you ever have to choose between your dignity and the love of someone who didn't truly love you? Tell me your story, because every story shared is a hand extended to someone who feels alone. Every testimony is a light in someone else's darkness. And together, all of us, we can build something stronger than any betrayal. We can build hope.